Coming up this week on the Digital Live Show 886, Richard's here, and we've got lots to fit in. We're talking about EV, because I started to look at some EVs myself, as well. Gary already is, and Gary already has, and Richard is. We'll be talking about new builds of Windows 11 and what they did to Notepad, which is going to be getting upset, I think. We're talking about old cine films, getting them converted. I've got some software updates, lots more, so let's get straight to Richard. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. I don't think Gary's joining us tonight. He's on parental duties, so that'll keep him busy tonight.
Oh, another feeling well.
Yes, definitely. Less so for me nowadays, but yes, I know what you mean. There was something I was going to ask him about. I was been looking at some EV stuff, so I wanted to check out. But I know you something you looked at as well, because I've still got a couple of years left on my lease. But once it gets about halfway through, that's when generally I start looking at what option, because I've heard, because of lead times and everything. So it's probably a bit early yet, maybe 6 months early or something like that. But I did start to have a look around, and I knew you mentioned the MG EV4. I looked at that, and cost pound for features and everything else that you get, it seems to be one of the sort of the best ones that are out there at the moment.
It really is. It's astonishingly good value. I looked at it, must be a couple of months. I think it was just before Christmas. I think I last looked at this, and in the end I opted to go for a Kia Niro EV. But I would have gone for the MG4. I test drove an awful lot of EVs at the time from some very major manufacturers, because we're a Volkswagen household here. We've always had VW cars, Tiguan's and Golfs and things, and so I was going to go down the VW route, but after driving the ID3, which is a perfectly competent vehicle, but it's very expensive and quite under-equipped, I then thought I'd have a look at some alternatives, and looked at the Hyundai. I think it's the Ioniq 5 is theirs, which is very good, bit big for me, and the MG4, which I thought frankly was superb. It was, as you say, astonishingly cheap. I would say very, very similar to the ID3. If you drive an ID3, it feels very similar inside, very similar sort of on the road, very similar feel. But it had a lot more features, things like a 360-degree camera, for example, which is really quite handy when parking. And sort of similar range. I think it's probably the same range, if not slightly more than the ID3. The only real downside, to be honest, to it was that Mrs. Speed wasn't that keen on the driving position. She's very used to the SUV type position, and the MG4, the ID3, all those cars, they're more geared up to, I wouldn't say sporty, but it's more of a compact car driving posture. So that was probably the only reason why we didn't go for it, because it was also relatively easy to get hold of. I think there was only an eight-week wait for them. We did try out the MG5 as well, which is the larger vehicle, and that was terrible. So I wouldn't recommend going near that. As in, clearly the MG4 was designed from the ground up as an EV. It's clearly an EV, and we ended up going for the Kia Niro, which is slightly more expensive, and that again has not been designed ground up as an EV. It's the Kia kind of hedged its bets. There's a hybrid version and what have you, so it's not a pure EV. But again, I chose it because of the seating position was good. Both cars, the MG4 and the Kia, have got intergalactic warranties. I think the MG is 80,000 miles, the Kia is 100,000. It's just enormous amounts of warranty. I think the MG4 will depreciate slightly faster than say a Kia, but if you're looking for I wouldn't say budget, because these cars are ferociously expensive. Budget's the wrong word to use, but compared to what else is out there, and I presume you'll be looking at some other German manufacturers like BMW, I guess, when you change yours in, these are considerably less and very well equipped. And as I say, if it hadn't have been for the driving position, I would probably have gone for the MG4, which really surprised me. But then again, I was also very pleasantly surprised by the Kia too. But the MG4, because MG has always been a slightly odd brand, is now being relaunched in the UK. Obviously, we're old enough to remember MG when they were, when they were all built in the UK, and now, of course, it's a Chinese. It's now a Chinese brand, I believe. and it's being relaunched. So its dealer network is relatively, it's not fully mature yet. That could well put some people off, but I think the MG4 it is, the time I had it, I thought it was a superb car, and I thought, crikey, some of these more established car makers are going to probably be quite rattled by this, because it's a really good, competent EV, very, very, very well equipped, a great warranty, and I can see them doing quite well.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I saw from it. I mean, actually, the dealers, there is one not that far from where I live, because that's what kind of caught my attention, because I drove past it on the weekend. So, yeah, it's something. I think my plan will probably in the summertime, do some test drives and things like that. But when you're looking at monthly payments, and it makes a considerable difference. I mean, if you looked at, say, I don't know, the Volvo or a BMW, they're massively different in price. So
yeah, they are definitely. Yeah,
and I know sometimes you get what you pay for, and I already have a BMW, so I'm used to that model. But it's still, it looks to me like perhaps there's going to be some adjustments in the pricing going forward, if as the other manufacturers, the Chinese and Kias and so on, all start to come in with lower price vehicles.
I mean, I really think there has to be, because certainly Kia. I mean, the MG4, there was maybe some issues with fit and finish in places. It wasn't the complete package. It was. I think if perhaps you're used to coming from a hewn from granite type vehicle, it might be perhaps not what you're looking for, but. Again, I think you're doing the right thing. You should test drive lots of vehicles, just take them out for a few hours. And as I say, I was very pleasantly surprised. And I think that there is going to be a shake-up with these traditional manufacturers who are now faced with, brands like Kia, who, frankly, 7-8 years ago were a joke.
Yeah.
And now they're a very serious vehicle. And certainly going from the Volkswagen ID3 to going to the Kia. And as I said, I've always gone for Volkswagens in the past and had some Mercedes as well. I thought the Kia is nicely built, well equipped, a great warranty, and I thought this car really does everything I need. It's and it's considerably cheaper than the alternative. So yeah, I would recommend you. But again, obviously, personal choice is personal choice. I'd recommend you go. I mean, the reason we're looking, because we're about midway through the lease for our Tiguan, is purely down to mileage and fuel. It's we're now doing so many miles to the car, and even though petrol in the UK has come down in price a bit, it's still expensive. And it's when you work out you're spending sort of £400 plus a month on fuel, you think, well, actually, even with energy prices being the way they are, the electric car starts to make a lot more sense than it did before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll let you know how I get on with that. We'll look at that later in the year, and we'll see what Gary thinks as well. And of course, you'll be getting yours at some point, so I'll be interested to see
very soon. Bear in mind that there is normally quite a substantial wait list. I would say that for EVs.
Now, something at the other end of this, we've gone from one extreme to the other. Last week we talked about conservation of all media technologies, and it just so happened that I was up in my loft, clearing out the loft, fitting some very nice loft shelves, but not the subject for this show. But I did come across these, and I vaguely remember my grandmother giving me these. But these are two 400 feet cine reels. 8mm films. So at the labels on the side, I think somewhere say Scarborough 1964 and Morecambe 1964, and that's 65. So filmed by my grandfather. So I'm pretty much guessing my mum would be on this, because she would have been a teenager, I would imagine, at that time. So if I do the maths right. But anyway, so the only thought I did have is how much of it is landscape and how much of it is the family stuff, because I know I'm guilty of that. You tend to take loads of landscape stuff, but in retrospect, you wish you want the family stuff, but I prefer the landscape stuff. But I did see some titles, because it's really hard to see what's on these things, isn't it? So if anybody's not seen these before, this is a film reel, and I don't know how many frames per second 8mm film is, but there's all the film on there, and I can see some titles frames on it, and I can see a bit of background. It looks like probably Morecambe Bay or something like that, knowing where they were at the time. So I think my next plan is to get these digitized and see what's on them. Yeah, because it's something that I'm pretty sure my mum will be on it. I'm sure my grandmother will be on it as well. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see. There might be some families.
So evocative as well. It really is. Wow, I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and this is obviously the original box as well. So this box will take from 64. So I had a look online at some different options. One option is you send it away. I found one place that did it £40 for a 400-foot reel. I think that's or reel is what you could call them, isn't it? And so I've got two of those, so it's like 80 odd quid. But I know some just the normal shops where you used to take your old films to get printed in, in your high street shops, photography shops will do them as well. So I'm going to have a look around and see what the best options are. But yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to see what's on these. So these aren't Super 8, these are standard 8 according to Gary. So anyway, yeah, you just take these off and I'll be interested to see what's on them. But I don't think there's any audio on these. Is there? They're just
yeah, I don't think so.
No, they're just cine reels. But yeah, amazing to I've had them for some time. So that'll be quite interesting to hear what's on them. I also found a lot more cassettes as well. So I've got a box full of cassettes to go through now, which I told you about last week. I found the one. I played it for my sister at the weekend. See, I told you I was right. It's only took me over 30 odd years or whatever it is to prove my point, but I got there in the end.
No one holds a grudge quite like the Dixons.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, but anyway, so the other option I did look at with these as well is you can buy machines do it yourself, which to convert it to MP4, but they're a couple £100. So only having the two reels, it seems a bit pointless.
Although it's a bit scary, isn't it? Just to kind of send it away and hope that it's going to not be damaged at all. Because I think that those tapes are obviously very old and very precious now. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so that's why I think I was thinking of maybe looking at other sort of the local high street ones as well, where I can actually take them in and.
Yeah,
but I'm sure they sent them away anyway. So it's not like
yeah.
But anyway, so I'm going to have a go at that and see what they're like. But it's probably more expensive than I was thinking. But then I thought, well, even just doing an analog cassette tape conversion, which I did, it takes ages because it's real time. It's not digital where you can do it, 2 or 3 times. You've got to do it real time.
Yep.
So I'll send those away. So I'll have a look at that. But it's quite interesting how I found those at the weekend. Right, some other news. We have got some build news to talk about as well. But before we talk to that, you sent me and I got a copy of it. I sent an email on Friday night from Altspace.
Oh yeah, this is very sad. Yeah, it's Altspace VR. Didn't we do a show in Altspace a while ago?
We did do, yeah. I think we've done a couple of things in there, yeah.
Yeah, so Altspace VR sadly shutting down. I think it's going to happen quite quickly. It's going to, I think Friday, March 10th will be when it goes away. And did it make 10 years? I know it launched in 2013. I can't remember when in 2013. So I guess it's quite sad. Altspace, for those who aren't aware, is kind of it's a VR world where not so much playing games or things, but where you'd get together and discuss things. And again, we did a few shows in it and did some other bits and pieces, some meetups in it, which was fun. There was things like concerts, and there was comedy, and it was a very interesting place, and in many ways perhaps a precursor to what Meta keeps talking about with the metaverse, which makes, I think, the fact that it's going away all the more worrying for obviously people who are heavily wedded to the idea of metaverse, because it's this is one of the original things. Was acquired by Microsoft. When was it? 2017, 18?
I think it was. Yeah, it was around then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know if it says on the email. Yeah.
So Microsoft acquired them, and then a few years later, obviously killed them.
Yeah, and I mean, and the Microsoft acquisition was they actually announced that they were shutting down.
Yeah,
before Microsoft took them over, and then Microsoft sort of bailed them out.
Yeah, so I don't know how much this has got to do with Microsoft's change. I mean, they mentioned their they obviously plugged the Microsoft Mesh, which is Microsoft's more corporate version of this. But I mean, obviously, this has come as the layoffs have been announced at Microsoft as well. The various teams are closing down. I don't know what this means for the likes of HoloLens and mixed reality. It can't be good, really,
No,
can it?
I don't think so. No.
So, yeah, I guess it's a fond farewell, as they say, to Altspace VR. I'm quite sad to see it go. I think again with VR, the lockdown, the pandemic was the time when VR was going to prove its metal or not, and it looks like it really hasn't. Unfortunately, I think it's going to remain a niche for a while yet, which is, I think, a great shame because I am still a big fan of VR. But yeah, farewell, Altspace.
Yeah, it was a good fun environment, and I mean, I think there was even a launch, wasn't there, of something I once attended getting virtually. Alex Kipman was there, and
yes, I remember. Yeah.
And like I said, I think they were close to shutting down, and then Microsoft saved them, but not this time. And it's quite quick as well. And I was sad when I saw the email, but then I thought, well, as much as I enjoyed it, I think the last time I went in it was when we were messing about with it during lockdown. So. But I know there's been some communities that have sort of built up through that, and like you said, it's almost what I kind of envisage as Facebook wanted to, or Meta wanted to do with VR, that kind of thing. But it looks like there's nothing in it for Microsoft. I mean, to go with that as well, the mixed reality toolkit entire team has gone in those Microsoft layoffs. So they were the ones that were responsible for a lot of the SDKs, and it was an open source project, I think. Or was it? No, it was a closed source project. That's right. Yeah, not an open source project. But they've the whole team's gone. So it's the end of any consumer ambitions that Microsoft have got for VR. But I think it's not quite often. Microsoft are good at killing products and services that other people then sort of do well with, that other areas. But then I got a feeling, like you said, that if they couldn't maintain the success from lockdown, then it's not going to go anywhere. But it seems a shame. But I'm pretty sure that the whole mixed reality team, as in the one that we know built into Windows 10, has gone. I think it's in maintenance mode. If anything, there's no changes in Windows 11. They don't even mention it. So. It's a shame. It was a great technology, and I really like playing around with it. But I have to admit, I told me end up saying I haven't fired my headset up for probably 2 years now, or since we were doing stuff in lockdown. So it's kind of a shame. But and I look at my son, and he's got the Oculus headset, and he doesn't use it that often. He says, "Oh, I need more room space and things." And I think he just plays on PC games and Xbox and PlayStation games, and yeah, there's still that barrier to entry, isn't there? So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. It's a bit of it's certainly not for Microsoft's consumer VR stuff. That's it, isn't it? It's kind of they've given up on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I kind of wonder. I mean, not just consumer, but I kind of wonder if we'll ever see a HoloLens 3 or at this point, because the team does seem to be being disbanded. Microsoft perhaps moving on. I mean, I can remember end of 2019, they were very heavily into it, and I do wonder if they've perhaps stepped back a bit now and realised that the whole AR thing is maybe where we want to go. We've realised there's more money to be made out of Azure and Azure Twins, really. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, now perhaps they'll be providing back-end services for other platforms, but yeah, it's a shame. I think they were they had a good platform with Windows 10 and the mixed reality whole environment and hardware, but it never quite took off, did it? But
no, it didn't at all. No, I mean, I can see where these things are going to go. Is going to be almost like a Google Glass type thing, where you'll have assistants and things. So you'll have a headset, but it will allow people to see what you're doing and then give you remote assistance. I can see it going that way, because anything else is just too hard to do, too complex to do. These wonderful demonstrations you'd see of sort of cars and engines in space. You do things, they're actually very hard to develop. and and very expensive. I know of a few people who work in the industry, and it's not a insignificant thing to do. So whereas I can certainly see a market for a headset where you can see what's on. You may not have the wonderful overlaid visuals that can detect what your hands are doing, but you might have a person that can see what you're doing and then give you assistance, like cut that wire there, we'll put that over there. I can see that maybe being where this is going to go in. I think certainly when Apple's device arrives, I'm sure it will arrive at some point, that may be more the way they go than the way we saw HoloLens go.
Yeah, it's great. Very excited by all the technology, but we've seen other companies as well go by the wayside, and Meta cut their staff as well. So it's an industry thing.
And Meta have, Google have. I mean, it's the layoffs that are going on at the moment, and my heart goes out to those affected. Obviously, it's not just Microsoft. It is pretty much every tech sector. I think Spotify as well. And after the insane hiring of the last year, it's now the contraction is well underway.
Yes, that's that. I suppose that's a problem with getting old, is you see these patterns now. So it's not a new thing for especially get to our age. You see these things, the big peaks and then the troughs, and these things do level themselves out. But yeah, the hype trains fail eventually.
Yeah.
But the good news is that all the development resources are going into a product that you love, and we all love. Notepad is getting some development. Why the sigh?
Just leave it alone. Yeah. So this is Notepad. Notepad was great. It was just, basic text box, jumped up text box. Been in Windows since Windows 1. It's a text editor. It's great. And for some reason, the last few years, they've been unable to stop tinkering with it. And this latest thing is multiple tabs. So you can basically have tabs in Notepad now, which they've called, and I quote, it's a top requested feature from the community. Really? I mean, who wants this? Who really wants this? Because you can have as many notepads open as you want, but no tabs. Everything must be tabbed. And so Microsoft has gone in and they've I think it's in a preview for Windows Insiders, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah.
And obviously Notepad came out of the Inbox app, so it's I think updatable via the store now. But I mean, it's nice they're doing it. I do think there's I know, as Gary would say, the Windows team is split across many areas and things. I do wish they would do some other bits in Windows first. There's an awful lot of fixing that needs to happen in Windows. It seems every other week there's a new vulnerability or a new issue. And yet here we are adding tabs to Notepad. Well, I mean, great, well done. Please leave Notepad alone and work on other stuff. Notepad was fine as it was. It didn't need changing. It didn't need. It was fine. It worked fine. But no, they have to go in and change it. Oh dear. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. I
think it's rather good, and you can have multiple tabs, just like File Explorer, Terminal, and the browsers now.
Yeah, again, happy for it in File Explorer. Really liked Terminal, as you know, but I just wish they'd leave Notepad alone. It did a really simple job really, really well, and it's like, just stop messing with it. It was fine. Leave it alone. I mean, there's many other Notepad type applications out there. I can think of one, Notepad++ springs to mind.
Yes.
If you need more features, look at one of those. Notepad, leave it alone. It's fine. It's simple. It's a simple tool, handy for copying, pasting, getting rid of formatting from apps you may not want. It's just a simple tool. Leave it alone. Fix other things in Windows, but no, they have to add tabs to Notepad. Hey, great. What's going to be next? I'm not going to guess, actually.
No. Yeah. Well, they did have a new build last week, but that, unlike Notepad, didn't really have any major changes to it. There was more changes to Spotlight and a new graphics setting, and that was it, really, isn't it? Spotlight got rather. ambiguous what he said in the post. You may get something different, I think was basically saying. You might get spotlight changes, you might not, and who knows which one you get if you do get them.
Yeah.
Because they're doing it doesn't look like A/B testing, it looks like ABCD testing now that they're doing.
And they're probably also very busy working on all these features that everyone wants in Notepad.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So Spotlight is the background lock screen type thing. So I think it's just changing some of the dialog boxes or some of the info that goes with it. But again, not probably the most requested feature, but there you go. So that was in build 25281, and there was some one graphics change and some bug fixes. There's still the issue with the ARM resuming from sleep, I think. Was the ARM? I think that's. Oh, was that fixed? No, that was fixed, wasn't it? Yes, they fixed that. There is an ARM issue though. Windows Hello doesn't work.
No, I think the ARM thing in 25281.
Yeah, they fixed it.
They fixed it. I think it's still there because I've had this myself where they don't resume.
Yeah, they did actually say they'd fixed it.
Oh, okay.
A few builds ago. Yeah, the pin's not working, but sorry, Windows Hello's not working.
Okay, because I saw I did back on 23rd saying they were having issues with resuming. So
yeah.
And that has actually been an issue with me on my Windows Dev Kit where it has hung at the OS boot logo and you've had to go through the recovery environment to get it back. And I've also unfortunately had to more than once use BitLocker recovery to get it back, which is not ideal.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm sure at some point we'll talk about long-term usage of, because I've been using this now for a few months. I do have thoughts about the dev kit, and I've gone from thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great if consumers had this, to I'm really glad consumers haven't got this.
Yeah, maybe that's something we should look at next week then. But actually, we did have a question on that from a reader who asked you if there's a way to get a higher refresh than 60 hertz.
Yeah, I saw this. Well, I mean, my monitor runs at various hertz, and it may be something to do with the monitor it's attached to. It not recognizing the various available modes, because I know on mine will go 60 and 100 quite happily.
Right.
It's just as a standard drop down, choose it, and it just works. So I hate to say it just works. So I think maybe it could be something to do with the monitor. I'm also connected via USB-C is it FireWire? I can't remember what it's called.
A mini display port, is it?
I'm not using them. Oh. But this is one of my other rants about mini display port. I'm having all kinds of problems with that, and I've tried different HDMI type adapters going through to display ports and things, and I've found that it just will not wake up when it's plugged in there. If you plug it in via USB-C, then it works fine. USB-C to display port, not a problem at all. Mini display port to display port, not happy at all. And I've been told to perhaps try going through HDMI and using a powered HDMI adapter, which is what Microsoft recommends if you're going to an HDMI monitor. But there comes a point where I've got too many cables. I don't want any more adapters. So I'm not sure what's caused the problem there, but I know it works perfectly well if I do it through the if I connect it via one of the USB-C things. So I guess my question would be the monitor type being used, if that can definitely support 100 meg. I'm sure it can. And if it's going through the mini display port or USB-C, because as I say, I'm going through USB-C and I do have the option to run at 100 megahertz. 100 hertz.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, well, there you go. So I'll hopefully that's really I'll add that back to the post anyway. So and then we can discuss the your long-term review of that in the coming weeks.
I am using it as my main Windows rig at the moment, but it's got issues.
Now, we also got 2 builds going to the beta channel last week, 22621 and 22623. I think they didn't have that much in there. The rounded corners are in there, and that's it. I think in that there wasn't a huge amount of changes in that one either. Although more, I think there were. Just remind myself, but I think there were more changes in that than there were in the dev build. There seems to be more activity in the beta channel at the moment.
Yeah, and the release preview also got an update on the 17th, didn't it? Which again had Spotlight stuff in there, and it had storage alerts for OneDrive. So
yeah, storage alerts. That's it. Yeah.
Getting slightly confused as to which build is the one that's actually having the most activity right now.
Yeah. Talking comments, actually, do you remember a few weeks now I've been saying my Surface Go, it's been working fine for a bit, and then the keyboard stopped working, and I actually wrote an article about 4 years ago on how to fix a keyboard on a Surface, and even my own article didn't sort it out. So I kind of thought there must be a physical failure, because I've tried the trick. The trick that I wrote about, which worked every time until this time, was you go into the BIOS. And once you go to the BIOS, for some reason, that would just reset it enough for the keyboard to start working. But that trick didn't work this time. I tried uninstalling the drivers, reinstalling the drivers, cleaning the connectors. I know it's software more than physical hardware, but never sure. So I've reinstalled the builds. I've tried all sorts. I've pretty much given up. And then someone sent me a comment on one of the YouTube videos saying, "Let the battery drain, and that'll fix it." I thought that sounds too simple to be true, but I thought, well, might as well try it, because I had the exact problem. So powered up the Surface Go. Actually, it takes quite a while to drain a Surface Go battery, because they don't do a lot. So I had to set all the things never go to sleep, on screen display, and everything else. Left some stuff running on it. Anyway, so I did let the battery drain down completely, powered it back up. The keyboard didn't work, but then I rebooted it, and the keyboard worked.
Hey!
So that did fix it. And the keyboard is still working now, which is really weird. Actually, the keyboard stopped working today, so I went to the BIOS and it started working again. So yeah, so I've now got my Surface back with the trackpad and keyboard working, which is amazing, because I'd really given up with it. I'd tried so many things to try and fix it. So I've updated the post, and maybe that helps somebody else. But that's really strange. That doesn't. I can understand going to the BIOS, maybe resets Windows or something. But why a battery drain? That's just seems really weird, doesn't it? That like maybe there's some capacitor or something that's holding a charge, but it just seems a weird thing to fix. It's not in there's no battery in the keyboard, so it's the actual Surface that you're doing. But you think, what's the difference between a battery drain restart and just a normal reboot, or a shutdown restart? I don't know, but it fixed it. So that's a new one on me, but anyway, it worked.
Happy days, well done.
Yeah, so I'm quite happy with that, because I quite like the Surface Go. Like I say, it's getting a bit longer in the tooth now. If only they bring an ARM version, but it sounds like that might not be the best.
The dev kit. I'd say it's a dev kit. I would not recommend consumers go near it. It's interesting making things work, but we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah. I did a couple of other videos this week. I'm
looking forward to hearing even more about your Korg adventures.
Yeah, so I've got the Korg ModWave synth, which I really love. It's a really nice synth. That's the Raspberry Pi powered one. I'm really enjoying using that one. But like I said a few weeks ago, they make a native. We call it the native. So the ModWave, the software only version of VST is ModWave native. So it runs in Windows. I think there's a Mac version as well. Somebody did ask me actually in the comments, does it run on the M1 processor, the M2 processor? Yes, it does. When I checked the Korg. So, but it's nice to have the both versions of it, because if you've got both synths, you can get them to talk to each other. If you're using the recording software, I use Cubase, you can use the virtual version of it multiple times. So if you've got 10 tracks, you can have 10 synths, which means you don't have to record them. You can just there's virtual instruments, but then for sound design and playing, you use the real one. So you get the best of both worlds. And I think the software itself is a couple £100, but if you've got the physical one, I think it was $40 to get the virtual version. When I did test it, I thought, well, it's got a they call it the Chaos Pad, which is a little touch pad on there. I can't show you that quite, the wires are in the way, but there's a touch pad on here where you can it's got what's called physics, It's called chaos physics, actually, and maybe I can actually fire it up and show you. But it's part of it's a really interesting way of adding sound variations to your songs, because or to your sounds. Not only does it, let me share the screen. There we go. Okay, so this is the virtual version that I've got here. So here's the chaos pad, and as I flick that with my finger, it can do things with physics. Now I'll find one that's got physics running on it. So the screen sharing software doesn't make it that smooth now, but you can see it's actually got physics. So this one, so as you move your finger over the trackpad, you can have it things so like the center of it is got gravity on it, so it attracts that ball inwards, or you could have it so it's opposite, it pushes it away, or you can choose all these different physics engines that you want from it. So and that can affect the sound real time.
Wow,
so modulation, yes. So it's a really great way of choosing making this you like this an orbit physics. So this is going to orbit and that modulation can change the pitch and the waveforms and whatever. It can basically change anything on the synth. So it's incredibly complex but really effective. But what I wanted to see was how well this works with the touchscreen, and as you can see, it works really well. It works exactly like it does on the physical version. So I captured some video of that. So yeah, I was quite surprised at how well that actually works. So if you're thinking of just you can just buy the VST on its own without buying the physical keyboard as well. So if you've got no space for more keyboards, you can get the VST version and have a play with that. But I always recommend getting more keyboards, because you can never have too many keyboards. You can always stack them up on the shelf behind me if you yeah. So that's the VST version. So I'm going to do some more playing around with it, but yeah, I'm quite enjoying it. But I like the combination of having the real one and the virtual one. So yeah, they do some other ones as well, but I have no space for any more. Especially if I've got to save up for an EV as well. Can't buy anything else.
Oh no, yeah, but you'll be saving money with the EV, because you'll be reducing your monthly payments and using way less fuel.
Yes, yeah, so that gives me space to fill these.
There we go.
Stacks up a bit
exactly.
More. I've got a bit of under shelf lighting as well, and I've fitted to these as well. Now my shelves behind me, because that's a bit of a problem when it gets a bit dark at the back, especially when you try to plug things in. So I put some USB lights on there. And
are they controlled from somewhere, or are they just tedious plug-in stuff?
The plug-in stuff, but they're all going back to the whole thing goes back to a D-Link smart plug.
Okay.
So the whole bank goes on and off, so I can control that through the smart plug as well. So yeah, I need some more smart plugs now, but yeah, I've got most of everything in this room now on a couple of smart plugs, so I can. In fact, I give it the phrase, the trigger word for my Amazon device. I say room startup, and what that does is turns on all the smart plugs, so all the keyboards come on, the light comes on, my desk light comes on, the whole thing, and I've got one called room shutdown, which shuts everything down as well. Not as good as my cancel Christmas routine, but yeah. So with two commands, and I can control the whole room. You just need more smart plugs. So I was thinking of getting some of those. You can actually get the smart plugs now that are actually built into the plates, can't you, completely now? So where you've got the sockets, you can have the ones that are built into the sockets, so you don't need the separate smart plugs. So I was thinking about doing that, but then I started doing some research on it, and I found some that I thought, oh, these look quite good, and then sort of I think they were, I can't remember what they're called now, Den, I think, but they actually went bust. Or they turned this. They certainly pivoted to a different. I think that they effectively pivoted to a different platform, and do different products now. So I think the company may exist, but that service doesn't, and the smart plugs still available on Amazon actually, which was a bit strange. But yeah, there's no service to go with them, so they're just plugs, not smart plugs. So, which is a bit, when my D-Link ones that I've had for a few years, they've had to go because D-Link shut the service down. But I've got a few years out of them, and then just put a different smart plug in its place. But these ones are, the ones I was looking at are actually hardwired in. So if they, the manufacturer shuts down that, you've actually got to physically remove those sockets if you want to replace them with smart plugs again, rather than just. I don't know what the building regulations are for swapping plugs and like that. I've swapped them myself. It's not difficult if you know electrics, but I'm not sure if there's any building regs where you're not supposed to swap plugs anymore. I'm not.
Yeah, I think sockets are tricky to do. I think you do need a qualified person to do it. But,
yes.
As you say, it's not hard. I mean, I've done a few myself. It's not hard to do yourself. I'm not quite sure how anybody would know you've done it, but
yes. Yeah.
But not that I'm saying one should ever
yes.
go outside of what the regulations say, but yeah, it's not hard to change plug socket. Just make sure you turn power off first, and the rest of it's quite straightforward. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I found it about as easy as wiring up a plug.
Yeah, there's only 3 wires, and they're already in the other one, so you can't go so far wrong really with those.
Exactly. But then again, I mean, are we talking skills that you and I, being, shall we say, of a certain age, that may not necessarily be there? Because I mean, I'm pretty sure that wiring a plug may be beyond some people.
Actually,
just
that's
because they've never been taught to it, and plugs always come molded on things now. So
yeah, exactly that. I was talking because I repaired my dead and tape player, but I had it stored in the loft without a plug. So I had to when I got it down from the loft to get it going again, I had to fit a plug to it. So I had to find a plug, which meant more rooting around in the loft. I did find one and fitted it, but then I thought, actually, if I gave it to my sons, one of them's is IT support second line now. I'm not sure he would know how to change a plug because he's never seen one.
Exactly,
everything
is
molded.
requirement, is there?
Yeah, no, it's an old. I mean, you go back. Probably this dead and tape player came without a plug, because you didn't used to get plugs, did you, when you bought equipment?
It was always very annoying, wasn't it? Yeah, you basically buy it and it would come with there's no plug on the end. You have to buy a plug or snip one off somewhere else and.
Yeah, that's what I used to do. Take it off something else, and I think my dad would go, "Where's the bloody plug from there?" Well, sorry, Dad.
Yeah.
Yes, I need to plug again. But yeah, so yeah, you're right. It is a skill, and I think the things with the sockets and things like that, it is something that if you used to wiring plug, then it makes kind of sense. But yeah, I wouldn't ask my lads to do it. I wouldn't ask them to fit a plug, really, because like I said, they've never come across it. Everything's always molded now, isn't it? But
yeah.
But anyway, so the point was that I say is that when you buy this smart home technology, the more integrated it is in your home and physically integrated with wiring and that kind of, especially if you've got to pay a qualified electrician to come and fit them. So say I fitted 40 sockets, double sockets in a house refit, and then that manufacturer goes out of business. That's a lot of work, isn't it? To either to resurrect them from being just dumb plugs, and they don't stop working; they just become dumb plugs. But if you want the smart home thing again, you've got to then go and refit them. So
yeah,
it's what we were saying a few weeks ago with Arlo and other stuff, isn't it? You've got to choose your smart home provider carefully, and the other option is to go for the standards, like Gary's been doing. But even the standards are changing all this. So
yeah, it's an interesting one, because the standards are one thing. As you say, standards do change all the time, and I think we went through a period where these things were relatively easy to use, and I think there's now been enough worry and shock where things have suddenly stopped working, that they're perhaps less consumer friendly than they used to be. So almost going back to where we were when Gary and we all were doing things with more technically difficult solutions than the consumer friendly ones that were heavily promoted. I think people may have bought into them and have been burned, and I wonder if that might cause some reluctance and fear in the future, that people will be less keen to buy into new tech after devices that they bought expecting to use for years suddenly stop working and aren't supported anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like you talked about, you're renovating parts of your house or your kitchen or whatever. If you fitted a lot of smart plugs in there with these things and they stop working, then you either got to just go back to being dumb plugs, or you've got to swap them out again. It's just it's that issue, actually, isn't it, with technology? I think we're finding is talking tape players and cine reels and things like that. Each generation of technology seems to get less time before its obsolescence as we progress faster and faster. The lifetime before obsolescence is decreasing, isn't it? So, with VHS tapes lasted longer than DVDs. DVDs lasted longer than Blu-rays. Blu-rays lasted longer than, say, whatever the next, until they're obsolete. And each cycle of technology seems to have a shorter time before its obsolescence.
Exactly, and of course, one of the things to bear in mind is looking at your box of cine reels there. They were shot 50, 60 years ago now. Well, 50 years, 50 plus. How old am I?
Well,
50 plus years ago.
Well, this one is actually 59 years old. This one.
Okay, so and I've got to wonder if I shot a video on my phone today, and would I be able to read that in 60 years' time?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Would it even still be around? Would would the service it's been recorded to, would that even still be present? I mean, we talk about the likes of OneDrive and iCloud and Google Drive, what have you, always being there, but 50, 60 years time, will they still be there? So again, you come back to needing to have actual physical backups and copies elsewhere, because you simply can't be sure these services are going to be around for the duration. If this stuff's really important to you, think how you can look after it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Having all these things actually is something that I know a few services start to crop up, but of sort of legacy. I think they're called legacy boxes, don't they? Where you can leave your digital legacy to someone.
Yeah.
So you can't. I won't be leaving. Well, I will, but I'll give these to my lads. But I won't be leaving cine reels of my stuff I've done now. Not that they ever want to watch my YouTube videos of Korg stuff, but I won't be leaving them in a box. They'll be in the cloud somewhere, and then when my account goes or YouTube goes, that's it. They've gone forever, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that anybody would be losing any sleep over that, but it is that kind of thing that you want to keep some digital legacy. And I think I did see a picture on Dragon's Den about someone trying to do a digital legacy service, and I think there's a few companies trying to come up with solutions for this.
Definitely, and it's going to I think become more and more important as years go by, as people realize where is this stuff going, and particularly when they look at things that as you got there with the 16-year-olds. But I mean my father's got albums and albums of photographs, which I think, I've got lots of photographs, but that they may not be around in 10, 20 years time.
And you think, well, I'm safe, I use Apple or I use Microsoft, but look at who were the big tech companies 60 years ago. It's a long time, isn't it? A lot changes. So none of the big tech companies from 60 years ago are around anymore. So
IBM's still around ish.
Yeah. I mean, if you like Kodak or maybe but yeah, IBM-ish. But 60 years you can't predict it, and obviously the digital legacy, it goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, isn't it? These museums are doing a good job in maintaining our library and the British Museum and that kind of thing. It must be a massive job just to try and keep all this going and constantly keeping it up to date with the latest technology, because you've just got to keep, I suppose the only way to do it is to keep moving it on to the next platform.
Yep.
But that's anyway, I'll let you know how I get on with my reels. I'll probably have a look at them next week. I've now got a big box down there of audio cassettes to go through, and as I mentioned earlier, that these are real-time things. So for me to listen to a C90 takes 90 minutes. It's a long time to sit there with your headphones on. There are some classic tunes that I wrote in 1989 and stuff like that, so that's okay. But I'm really looking for any of the family stuff, but there's not a huge amount on there. But anyway, we'll see. There's some nice Duran Duran on there and some Tangerine. In fact, I think I said this the other week, but I was going through some of my tapes, and I had like a mixtape, I think, on there. There was some Genesis, there was some Pink Floyd, there was some Tangerine Dream, and there was some Pet Shop Boys on there. I thought, bloody hell, that's my Spotify playlist from this weekend. My musical tastes have not varied that much, I'm afraid.
That is a slight problem for us. You think, you've got to try and keep moving a step to date, but you think, I do go back to the songs of the 80s and think, oh, you know what, I should really try and move on, but oh well.
Yes, oh well, yeah. Stick on the Spotify the 80s playlist, and I'm happy with that. Well, anyway, this stuff keeps coming around. So, right. Well, I think that's everything I had from this week's show. So next week we'll try and catch up on the dev kit, and we'll get Gary on some of the EV stuff as well. Hopefully we'll get some new builds to play with. That would be nice to have something new. But I've got some more how-to videos to work on, and so I've got those to do soon. I think I'm going to do a video on how to switch between local and Microsoft accounts, because that's something that seems to be increasingly harder to do. Or local accounts anyway.
Yes,
Microsoft don't want you to have them.
And I'll be looking forward to the next release of Notepad, which I gather will include the screaming whenever you're just screaming, non-stop screaming.
there's a mod wave one coming. I'll get a video of it. Right. Well, where we can find it, I'll include the links to your Mastodon account.
Thank you very much.
I'm still on Twitter @ISDixon, and we'll see you next week.
Cheerio.